talk about this topic. Everything I present here today are my views and mine alone. I find this to be a rather understudied topic that I've spent a good amount of time the past couple of years researching to better understand. And hopefully today you guys can walk away with somewhat better understanding as well. So I'm going to get really granular. I'm going to zoom in on particular units because that's a really good way of understanding the true nature of this force, who they belong to, what they do. So please bear with me with that. And at the end of the presentation, I'll try to offer some implications and thoughts about this force. So, what is the Maritime Militia? I'm providing kind of a rough definition, and this is in the context of the Asia Pacific, rather different than other militias worldwide. So, a military force raised from coastal populations that support state objectives at sea. Kind of simple. They're not released from production, meaning they still have their jobs, they still engage in economic activity, but they organize in military formation and receive a degree of military training. So naturally, these forces are drawn from port areas that have concentrations of marine industries, so fishing, shipping, shipbuilding, but mostly it's concentrated in the fishing fleets. And often what we refer to as gray zone operations, they're tasked with a wide array of missions, from peacetime coercion to wartime support for active duty forces. But just a couple notes. I have a limited scope of examination here for a couple of reasons. For one, looking at these forces and fully understanding them requires to be language capable. So to examine the maritime militia of an entire region is quite difficult. I look at Chinese sources, but I'm rather limited when it comes to crossing other linguistic boundaries. And additionally, geographically, I look at the South China Sea mostly, because that's where there's a large amount of maritime militia activity occurring, because of the steady overall expansion of paramilitary forces and to support persistent territorial disputes. So, the two countries I'm looking at mostly is China and Vietnam, who both use the maritime militia to advance their territorial claims. They use them to defend their claims and their occupied features, and use them to push back against perceived incursions from foreign vessels. Both have rather rich traditions of people's war and the historical usage of the militia to defend its territory, and both consider their militia to be official components of their armed forces, in that both militia of both countries report directly to military chains of command, and that they don't form themselves, they're actually organized by the state and the military. They're similarly organized and similarly tasked. So here's just a quick two photos of both presidents meeting fishermen. On the left here is the Chinese president visiting a famous unit that was involved in at the Scarborough Shoal incident in 2012. And on the right is the Vietnamese president giving gifts to fishermen whose vessel became a casualty of the oil rig incident, the HYSY 91 oil rig that was placed south of Triton Island. I'm just going to dig down. The bulk of my presentation focuses a lot on China's maritime militia, simply because I am less capable of examining in depth Vietnamese maritime militia. And I believe Professor Thayer stated the other day that it's difficult to find sources on Vietnamese, things like the Vietnamese militia. So, first off, China's maritime militia, it draws upon the world's largest fishing fleet, These are just some of the latest statistics I found. However, I'm not trying to imply that all Chinese fishing vessels are in maritime militia. That's very far from the truth. It serves to demonstrate that there's a very deep pool of resources to draw upon. Additionally, it's receiving much more attention politically in terms of policies. Maritime militia have been included in the 13th Five-Year Plan, as indicated by Major General Sheng Bin. He's the new head of the National Defense Mobilization Department, which manages nationwide militia reserve building. And he stated explicitly in an interview that maritime militia are a new key area of focus. And this graphic here is just representative of how these policies are percolating down to the provinces. You can see that maritime militia are growing as a proportion of the total militia forces. And additionally, they're becoming more specialized. So here's Beihai City from the Guangxi Autonomous Region. You can see in 2013 they had 2 detachments. By 2015 they had 10, and they all have unique specialized mission roles. And because of such a limited force, limited training, limited capabilities, the more narrow of a mission set you can give them, the better. It's easier to accomplish a narrow task as opposed to more multi-mission roles. So, where does this fit in China's sea forces? And we're calling it the Third Sea Force. It's part of broader civil-military integration initiatives, and also harks back to the traditional People's War theories of conducting war, whereby they coordinate the main forces with the local forces and the militia. And by extension, in the current political climate, that's being extended out into maritime. So this, the phrase that is used to describe this is joint defense by the military, the police, and the militia. And at sea, this takes the form of the Navy, maritime law enforcement forces, and the maritime militia working together. This is just kind of an interesting photo. You can see blue hulls backed up by gray hulls and white hulls. Of course, you're not going to normally see these forces with machine guns on the bow and banners identifying them. This is just a training exercise for internal consumption. Additionally, included this quote here from the Zhoushan Garrison commander stating why these forces are useful and valuable. They had low sensitivity for entering disputed areas. There's a lot of leeway in employing them for maritime rights protection. And as one recent English language, I think it's South China Morning Post, but quoted a fisherman as saying, some things are just not convenient for the military to do. So, maritime rights protection in the South China Sea. This is part of a project that Professor Andrew Erickson at the Naval War College and I have been working on in the past year. It's a series of articles written for the Center for International Maritime Security. And we kind of dive down on individual locations and key units from Hainan Province. We do that because Hainan Province is responsible for administering Chinese claims in the South China Sea, done through its newest municipality, Sansha City, as well. So you can see here I've just labeled Sanya City and Taman Township, 2 important, well-known units. So in the top left, you can see a rather infamous photo. I'm sure you've all seen it before. Is the U.S. survey vessel, the Impeccable, getting harassed by a group of Chinese ships. The most aggressive of which were the fishing vessels. So we looked at this photo, we identified the hull number, traced it back to its fishing company, who then we also found out is a big maritime militia unit and have been involved in a number of other incidents in the South China Sea, such as also being involved in the blockade of Second Thomas Shoal. They were present there as well. And that was largely facilitated by this supply and command ship that they utilized to get down there and maintain their presence there. Now this is common practice for distant water fishing to use these supply ships, but what we're also seeing is evidence of them using this to extend the range of the Maritime Militia in places like the Spratlys. In the top right, you can see a unit, a Maritime Militia Company from Tonbin Township, who is arguably one of the most famous Maritime Militia units in Hainan Province. They're the ones who received that visit from the Chinese president in 2013. And their involvement in Scarborough Shoal really reflected a theme of wearing two hats, dual-hatted forces. And yes, they were there fishing. They had their boats loaded up with giant clams, but at some point, when they reported by Philippine naval forces, they reported back to their border defense control station. Next thing you know, maritime law enforcement's on its way to protect them. And at some point, as this event was unfolding, they changed hats. They weren't there for profit. They assumed their role as maritime militia, and this is clearly stated as the deputy commander is outside of the lagoon, also supporting the Chinese civilian presence during that incident, trying to prevent Filipino fishing vessels from accessing the lagoon. Additionally, after being escorted out of the lagoon, they returned. I've identified squad leaders in this militia company who they had left. They went back to Tonbin, which is quite a distance away, and actually turned around a couple days later and went back. So it's pretty clear. And a more recent major event that occurred was the SY-91 oil rig. Both of these units were involved, as well as a number of other units from locations around Hainan Province. So that event unfolded when Guangzhou Military Region, which is now the Southern Command, sent out a mobilization order, and that went down to the Provincial Military District, and then went further down to the grassroots commands, who then mobilized their local forces to go and defend the rig. So these are examples of employing or mobilizing and militarizing the fishermen to support state objectives. What I'm going to show next in Sansha City represents a departure from that. It's similar, but actually quite different. So, for the Sansha City Maritime Militia, there are what I view as two areas of effort. One is the stationing of maritime militia on the islands and the building of militia-specific infrastructure. And, Sansha City was established in 2012, and they got a PLA garrison as well. They reorganized the militia that were already there. They reorganized them under the banner of Sansha City, and they have since grown significantly. What we're also seeing is the People's Armed Forces departments appearing on these features, on these islands. So a People's Armed Forces department is the grassroots PLA local command that is involved with the masses. What they do is they recruit for the PLA, they do veterans affairs, they do local national defense education efforts, but most importantly, they're responsible for recruiting, organizing, and training the militia. I think we can all agree that there is no steady, large, permanent population on these features. So it's logical that these People's Armed Forces departments are there solely for the purpose of managing the militia present on those features. That's further supported by the fact that they're often co-housed in militia outposts. These structures on the left. And these are also meant to monitor local seas. They have marine radar, AIS, and other monitoring equipment that they use to increase their awareness and support militia operations. So these People's Armed Forces departments, we have confirmed their presence on Woody Island, Tree Island, Drummond Island, and on Fiery Cross Reef as well. Reports have also confirmed Maritime Militia actually present on Mischief Reef as well. If you go down to Mischief Reef, say you go to Google Earth right now, and you'll see militia vessels that I'll show you later in this presentation. You can actually see it there. A view from above, of course, out of blurry, but you'll see them. So this is really the first effort that I'm explaining. You can see the level of integration or the effort in integrating the militia into this Navy Coast Guard militia joint defense concept. You can see Maritime Militia in the bottom left there manning workstations in this new Joint Defense Command Center, reportedly built at a cost of $6 million. So there's a significant effort at integrating them into the broader force structure. So now getting into the second area of effort for Sansha's Cities Maritime Militia. So in February 2016, they decided to establish a state-run fisheries development company. That summer, the PLA garrison commander on Woody Island, he stated in an article about National Defense Mobilization, he stated that, using the name of the company, he stated that this is going to be a maritime militia organization, and then proceeded to describe the formations that they're going to assume. Also, in 2015 is a Hainan government proposal to build a fisheries logistics base on Hainan Island to support the Sansha City fishing fleet. That same proposal described that fleet as 84 militia steel-hulled fishing vessels. So it's rather explicit and actually provides a number. And as you can see, these new vessels are appearing. They're being built rather rapidly. News reports state that they're all going to be delivered by the end of 2016. And you can see them, a contingent of them here present at the Sanya Yacho Central Fishing Port, which was just recently opened. But their key identifying feature is their unique characteristics, but also their hull designator, which is Cheong Sansha Yu, which stands for Hainan province. Sansha means they belong to Sansha City. So they're getting a new fleet here. And really what describes this new militia fleet, what really reveals their nature is the personnel that are going to be manning them. So on the bottom right there, you can see a table for a recruitment table offering jobs aboard this new fleet. And it lists all the positions, captain, deckhands, and so forth. But it also states that the priority hiring is going to veterans, specifically Hainan veterans, which is interesting considering the 300,000 troop reduction effort. But it also states that they are earning salaries. So correct me if I'm wrong, but my impression is that fishermen don't earn salaries. They go out and they catch fish, and basically they catch, that's where they get their income from. These guys are earning salaries according to this source, and pretty significant salaries. Also, a deckhand on one of these ships earns 90,000 RMB according to the source. And according to fishery statistics, the average Hainan fisherman only earns 13,000. So it's pretty enviable salaries that they'll be getting. And we've also documented personnel leaving other services to join this militia fleet. One guy, he served in fisheries law enforcement from 1994, and was applying to get this fleet to become a captain. Well, his wish was granted. He left fisheries law enforcement. He joined this fleet as one of the captains, and has reportedly already been conducting rights protection efforts, expelling foreign fishermen in Spanish. Another member who joined the ranks left. He was demobilized from a PLA transport unit. So you can see that they're crossing bureaucratic boundaries, drawing upon professionals to join this new force. So really reflecting a new degree of professionalization and militarization. Additionally, one point I wanted to point out is that these vessels were being built from multiple shipyards across China, all the way up the Changjiang River in Chongqing, and also in Wenchong Shipyard in Guangzhou. One news report stated that Wenchong Shipyard, a well-known builder of PLAN surface warships, recently built its first fishing vessel, which was one of these vessels. Now this is just a nice photo kind of showing what one of these vessels looks like. Most notable feature on them is a mast-mounted war cannon, which is a new interesting development. In May 2015, the captain of a law enforcement cutter based out of Sansha complained that because they can't detain or inspect foreign fishermen now, they try and use efforts like spraying them with water cannons, but their big cutters have too wide of a turning radius. They can't keep up with them, and they can't access the shallows. So here we see a clear demand signal being fulfilled by Maritime Militia. Additionally, you can see some really pronounced rub rails welded on the hull of this fishing vessel, suggesting that more capable of withstanding collisions, being more aggressive, shouldering. And in fact, that same year, the provincial military district commander, Zhang Tian, stated in an article he wrote that of one of the requirements for the Maritime Militia, they need to have large tonnage, steel-hulled fishing vessels that can withstand collisions. And here we can also see that capability being delivered. The photo on the bottom left there is another training exercise that they've conducted. It just shows them loading supplies on their ship, but the interesting part is that the crates are labeled light weapons. And additionally, these ships, according to a contractor that furnished these vessels, have dedicated armory and ammunition storerooms on these vessels. So it suggests at least an initial preparation to arm if necessary. Not to say that they are, but at least training to do so. Here's another interesting photo. Essentially, PLA Navy can't really deny some involvement with these forces. Here you can see, this is just last month, Guangdong Zhangjiang City Maritime Militia coming up alongside a PLA Navy vessel and getting trained by the personnel to conduct naval vessel repairs and resupply. This source also provided an interesting description, characterization of the transformation that China's militia is undergoing. So this one particular unit used to be a coastal militia company, where they just patrolled the shoreline, maybe they went out in skiffs. Later, they developed into a maritime militia company, and this is using the Chinese terminology for these forces. So being able to go out at sea, not being bound to the land. And their latest evolution is takes the shape as what they term a Far Seas militia squadron, demonstrating an effort to increase capabilities so that they can go farther afield and support the PLA Navy. Here I'll just discuss what appears to be an important purpose for building these forces. This is a quote from the provincial military commander I just mentioned in the last slide, Zhang Tian. In his description of how the maritime militia should transform and how they should develop, he stated one of his key themes that he kept bringing up was using civilians against civilians. And this is further supported by Senior Captain Li Jie from the Naval Research Institute in a TV interview discussing how they should deal with Vietnam's maritime militia. He stated, our best approach is to use our fishing vessels against theirs. Now, we saw this clearly in the oil rig defense south of Trident Island. The fishing vessels clashed, but they were clearly, the Vietnamese fishing vessels were clearly outclassed by the Chinese counterparts, as we saw. Additionally, I'm not aware of any, from the photo on the right, I'm not aware of any legal authority according to Chinese law about maritime militia boarding and inspecting foreign fishing vessels. You can see them there. They kind of look like they're not sure what they're doing, but a picture can say 1,000 words. So now I'm just going to really, in the interest of time, briefly cover Vietnam's maritime militia. I don't want to be redundant because they are similarly organized and tasked. As you know, the fleet is made up of a lot of smaller wooden fishing vessels, kind of reflecting that traditional, those traditional fishing communities. Both countries are trying to move beyond that to industrialize and commercialize the fishing fleets, but clearly China's much further along in that effort. But both are trying to strengthen the maritime militia. Interestingly, Vietnam passed the 2009 law on their militia and self-defense forces, and it went into great detail about the regulations for its marine militia and marine self-defense forces, which is a similar force, but interestingly provides a very a legal basis for their maritime militia building. And here's just some examples of training efforts. You can see marine militia, or maritime militia, and marine self-defense forces. Really, these are similar. The only difference is they're drawn from different parts of society. The marine militia comes from communal fishermen. The marine self-defense forces are from state agencies and such. But you can see that they're conducting similar training, both conducted by the Navy, and they wear similar uniforms. And of course, there's a lot of shortcomings in this force. Interestingly, some of the best, most revealing accounts come from Chinese sources examining the Vietnamese maritime militia, often stating that they don't conduct enough at-sea live-fire training, their vessels are inadequate to the task, and so forth. But they're trying to address that through government-led efforts to boost the marine fishing fleet. And we had similar news reports coming from the Philippines that they're trying to include the fishing community in an effort to assert its rights at Scarborough Shoal. But of course, maritime militias are not as effective if their navies or their Coast Guard can't stand up to things like the Chinese Navy, the Chinese Coast Guard. So, talking about some of the implications of these maritime militia forces, how do we interpret this more broadly? Are these calibrated signals, or is it just local activism? There's kind of a debate going on trying to figure this out. So here's one prime example, a recent one. A PRC defense chief goes down to Zhejiang province. He inspects maritime militia units in Ningbo and Wenzhou. Then makes a very public statement that they should prepare for a people's war at sea. And this was widely reported. Days later, Japan's lodged a protest concerning a large number of PRC fishing vessels near the Senkakus. So it's difficult to figure this out because we all know that the fisheries moratorium ends at the beginning of August. So is this just opportunism, going down there to kind of indoctrinate them before they go out to sea? Or is this really a broader signal? It's rather difficult to figure out. Some other implications are the fact that this is really expanding their tool sets to reinforce claims. It's not an effort to resolve the claims. So it's kind of a pessimistic trend. Essentially finding new avenues to assert pressure without the risk of the escalation of tensions. And of course, a single fishing vessel misbehaving can spark an international incident. If you're flooding these waters, and things like fishing fleets and maritime militia increases the amount of risk exposure to having incidents. And of course, we can all kind of assume that the island construction efforts in places like the Spratlys are, yes, they'll support civilian fishermen, but also by extension, maritime militia fleets as well. So really, there's also, you have to think that are the fishermen victims here too? Is the national strategy being forced upon them? Fishing stocks are depleting rapidly, and there's an obvious effort at militarizing them or politicizing them, and there is an increased effort at asserting party control on these boats at sea, turning fishing boat captains into militia cadres. So there's some, is this turning their already dangerous profession into even more hazardous ones? And is this trend causing what might have been maybe a couple decades ago, Vietnamese and Chinese fishermen might have cooperated and helped each other out? Is there resulting suspicions from this trend against the other side? Are they going to become more hostile towards each other and not fish in the same waters? And here you can see the Hainan Provincial Party Secretary going down to Tongan Township and explaining to them the implications of the 18th Party National Congress, the effort to become a maritime power, and what it means to them. So, definite degree of politicization here. Now, I got to admit, my research has been mostly focused on the what. Trying to understand these forces, I've spent less time trying to figure out how to deal with them, and I'm hoping that we can all have a discussion here or share ideas about how to address issues arising from the involvement of these irregular forces. A couple ideas, just to throw them out there, is making sure these states are aware that they are responsible for maintaining that principle of distinction. If they want their civilian vessels to be afforded protection, they need to have that, to identify them and disclose such forces. One example of a perceived benefit of this deception came from an article from Liberation Army Daily. They, when they put on camouflage, they're soldiers. When they take it off, they're law-abiding fishermen. So that just says it right there. Additionally, probably easier said than done, but expecting Coast Guards and Maritime Militia to adhere to the Code for Unplanned Encounters at Seas. Essentially, trying to stop this whole good cop, bad cop dynamic. Are their navies going to be the good face of naval diplomacy while their Coast Guards and Maritime Militia do the dirty work of the state out at sea? So how can we prevent that? And a couple of my own thoughts here is, perhaps navies and coast guards aren't fully aware of what's going on, what the Maritime Militia is doing, because they do report directly to local military commands. So there might be some bureaucratic miscommunication here. So what can we do to increase the channels of communication to make sure we're talking to the right people, or at least communicating, or sending messages to the right people as well? How difficult would it be to communicate with the militia directly? Language capable people aboard ships to properly warn them of the consequences of their aggression. I assume that many of the maritime militia, if they lose their vessel, they lose their livelihoods. Although there are efforts for local governments to compensate them for their losses when they're doing missions. So maybe that's distorted as well. And the last point, researchers can do a lot more. There's a lot more out there to find out, and casting light on these forces helps to provide the evidence for a very public discussion of how to approach the challenges of maritime militia. So I challenge more researchers to go out there and find out more. And for those who might be interested, you can find a detailed compendium on my colleague Andrew Harris's website. He puts everything up there. It's updated quite frequently, and I'd be happy to discuss the Maritime Militia more. Thank you.
Thank you for your very interesting presentation. Lieutenant Commander Koyama from JMSTF, and your analysis of here a Navy's objective to utilize the Maritime Militia, the militia against militia, is very interesting to me. But at the same time, in Japan,
Could you speak a little closer to the microphone?
sorry. In Japan, there are so many people to be concerned about that China utilize maritime militia against the Japan about the territorial dispute. What do you think about please tell me your assessment about it. So that means the Chinese maritime militia is only against the Vietnam or other country, or against the country like Japan. Thank you.
Just to make sure I understand your question, you said whether it's used more broadly or against a particular country?
That means your assessment about the Chinese militia is only against or another country's militia, or for example the U.S. Navy or the JMSDF or another Navy.
Okay, I'll address each question individually. So certainly, like I said, they're given a very broad array of missions between peace and war. In peacetime, maritime rights protection, it's about promoting your claims without escalating the tensions in the conflict. So a very easy way to do that is to reinforce the civilian presence, support legal claims through pushing, kind of squeezing out other civilian actors, and that's a very direct kind of niche to fill there. Again, there's also an element of optics. If you're ramming other states' fishing vessels with your Coast Guard or your Navy, it looks really bad. But if confrontations between fishermen, a lot of it goes unreported. It's the optics is more easily manageable there. So I don't think it's only directed against another country's opposing maritime militia forces or fishing fleets. But as you saw in a photo, maritime militia are also training to support active duty forces. So that alone signifies to me that they're looking much further beyond just peacetime coercion capabilities, that they want to have that reserve force, the traditional role of the reserves, to fill some kind of supporting role, a variety of roles. I hope that answers your question.
I see a number of potential questioners. If you could keep your questions quite tight, please. Thank you.
So the 2010 incident with the fishermen in the East China Sea in the Senkaku Diaoyu Island, it is my impression that this was a legitimate fisherman, but I believe that at the time Japan thought otherwise. What is your opinion? Do you think it was a legitimate fisherman, or do you think it was a sort of a staged intrusion?
Are you referring to fishing vessels approaching?
The fishing vessel that was captured by Japan and that set the beginning of the crisis between China and Japan about the Diaoyu Senkaku at the time.
As I stated in my presentation, I dived down deeply on the South China Sea. there's a lot more to find out about concerning the East China Sea. Maritime Militia is a nationwide force. If you go to every province, you'll find the Maritime Militia there. Not to say that all fishermen are Maritime Militia. That would be a wrong assumption. And whether that particular incident was a patriotic fisherman or someone, I can't tell you authoritatively because I haven't looked at that particular incident. Sometimes it really involves going through the weeds and finding more information. Sorry, I can't answer that for you.
Thank you very much. Ewan Grant, a former law enforcement intelligence analyst with particular interests on what merchant marines and militaries, particularly navies and air transport fleets, do in transition. My question follows on from the captain's question and your answer. You mentioned, I think, the Far Seas unit. Do you see any sign of Chinese fishing fleets or individual vessels deep sea in the Indian Ocean or deeper into the Indonesian archipelago with all kinds of implications for other issues? Thank you.
Concerning the distant water fishing going into places like the Indian Ocean, again, I can't answer authoritatively on if there are militia structures being implemented there. However, I wouldn't be surprised if an element of party control is being implemented because many fishing fleets try to set up these party structures and hold some, they're distributed kind of literature, party created literature to help make sure that they're kind of in line politically. But unfortunately, I haven't looked at the distant water fishing in the Indian Ocean and elsewhere. So I'm sorry, I can't answer that question for you.
Maybe one for the future.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Senior Captain John from China. I visited your institute several times and have many friends in your institute. But I think your presentation exaggerated the strength, the power of the Chinese maritime militia. First, I think I want to say that there is a long history of Chinese militia. It was set up in the war against the Japanese aggression in 1940s. It supported the Chinese army. So it's not this new phenomenon. Second, it's about power. You just said that there are no strong arms on them, rifles or something like that. And usually, they don't carry any weapons on their boats. And I agree with you, just we shouldn't connect all the activities, the normal fishing activities, with the maritime militia, just as the gentleman asked. In 2010, it was absolutely a fishing boat, a very small fishing boat. How can it dare to strike the Japanese steelhead Coast Guard ship? This is ridiculous. So I think the maritime militia of the Chinese people now in the South China Sea, there are many conducting, maybe sometimes their main job is fishery operations. And they can report the activities on the seas to the Peer Navy and to the government. I think their main task is to report what they encounter, not to fight. And I don't agree with your word, the terminology, militarization of the fishing space. Thank you.
One final point, please. Okay, one final point. We have thank you. Please, thank you. Last question.
Thank you. I'm Lan from the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam. Could you please clarify the tactic or the command of coordination between the maritime military of China with the other forces, perhaps operational in the nearby seas, in China Sea or South China Sea, please?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear that clearly. Comparing the command structure and organization structure?
Yeah, can you see any like combination or like coordination in command between the Maritime Militia and the other forces of China, especially in operational activities in the nearby sea, the East China Sea and the South China Sea, please? Thank you.
Thank you. That will be the last question in the interest of time. Please, Conor. Thank you.
Well, with some of your points, Senior Captain, I would agree that there is a very long history and tradition of using the militia in China, and this goes back to many of the wars that were fought over the years. And the out of necessity, when the PLA Navy was weak, it had to rely a lot on the fishing fleets to report the location of KMT vessels that were patrolling the coast. They had to utilize what they had available, but times are different now. We have a very large PLA Navy and the world's largest blue water Coast Guard, the China Coast Guard. So they're being repurposed and they're evolving to assume new roles under the current strategy. And that I also agree that for the majority of their job is involved in fisheries and helping support fisheries development. I would totally agree with that, and that they report what they see out there. However, yes, a lot of this can at times appear ridiculous, but it doesn't change some of the facts that I presented in my presentation. And as for the 2010 fishing boat against the Japanese Coast Guard, I can't clarify what that was, and perhaps it was just a fishing boat. As for the second question, the level of integration or the command and control, the coordination between the three sea forces in China, I wouldn't. One of the principles of Chinese militia building is yin di zhi yi, adapting to local conditions. In that every locality you have to kind of be flexible enough to work with what you have, the mobilization potential of that locality. So certain arrangements on the local level might vary, and from what we've seen in particular incidents, it's still unclear the exact command-authority relationship. To the best of my knowledge, they're under the regular management and command and in peacetime of the local PLA commands. But at times, when necessary, when given special missions, they can fall under the temporary command of the Navy or the Coast Guard as well. I wish I could be more clear on that, but the sources themselves aren't clear enough to give a definitive answer. And regionally, from North Sea, South Sea, and East Sea, I have seen no real indication that there's a major difference in the command relationships depending on each different sea area.
Thank you very much, Conor. Please join me in thanking Conor.